Welcome into this week's edition of Talkin Ball. My name is Gerry Hamilton, joined as always by CJ Vogel, and joined by John Donovan of LonghornWealth.net, which we'll talk about John in a second. CJ, it's almost commitment time, man. It's going to be a wild 2 weeks coming up, 2-3 weeks for the Texas staff and staffs around the country. A number of Texas targets are going to announce decisions here coming up in the coming days and next 3 weeks. So what we're going to do today for Texas fans is break it down position by position, who's left, what it looks like right now. But before we get into that, I want to take a second to tell you why you should give John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management team a call. John is a proud Texas Ex's Life member whose wife and all 6 siblings are also University of Texas grads. This explains why John branded his firm Longhorn Wealth and has dedicated his firm to providing total wealth management for Texas alumni, employees, family, and friends. John's a certified financial planner with over 30 years of experience and wants to offer every OTF member and fan a free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you and your family maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your own financial future and legacy. So whether you have a pressing concern about life insurance, a desire to get your kids' college funding program started, and need to roll over an old 401k plan, or want to have your estate planning strategy created, give John Donovan and the Longhorn Wealth team a call at 972-707-4900 to schedule your own 90-minute free consultation appointment, or just go online at longhornwealth.net to pick a consultation time and date on John's calendar that works best for you. Longhorn Wealth looks forward to hearing from you soon, and hook 'em. All right, John Donovan, thank you very much for your continued support of On Texas Football. All right, CJ, quarterback KJ Lacey, good. Running back Ricky Stewart and James Simon, good. Wide receiver, nobody committed. A lot of talent on the board. We'll start with DeCorian Moore. I spoke with somebody in that circle today, and Oregon may have had the best presentation of any school he's visited. Does that mean he's going to Oregon? We're not saying that. But that is interesting that Oregon had a great presentation for DeCorian Moore. Now he's going to sit back for about a month and kind of 2-3 weeks here and think about his decision, come to a decision, and then they'll start to figure out how he's going to announce that decision. On Texas Football still believes Texas is the front runner, Oregon, Ohio State, LSU fourth. The other interesting thing, CJ, that I got out of a conversation today was DeCorian went back and watched the Texas spring game recently. He watched Arch Manning's performance because he didn't see the spring game. He was at a regional track meet. So I thought that was interesting that a lot of people talk about, hey, 2025 quarterback in the class with DeCorian Moore. That's not factoring in his decision because he smartly knows that his timeline's different from an incoming freshman quarterback timeline.
Yeah, that is really interesting, especially when you go back to his time on campus April 6th and you go back and you hear a little bit about what he said watching the first scrimmage of the day, where maybe it didn't sound like the quarterbacks maybe surprised him
at
all
their best day.
Yeah. So for him to go back and witness what we all got to see with Arch Manning, which was highlight reel throw after highlight reel throw, I think that speaks a lot because, again, to your point, Gerry, this is not a guy that's expecting to sit around the minute he steps foot on a college campus. Of course, going back to DeCorian, of course, coming off of that Oregon visit, who hosted him? It was Evan Stewart, another DFW 5-star from the Metroplex. Other thing, I talked to a couple folks after that visit for DeCorian, Gerry, and I think Oregon had a great visit for him. Are you willing, if you're DeCorian Moore and family, to get on a plane up to Eugene every weekend for that Duck schedule? I just don't know if that's going to be something that they can overcome in this battle. And of course, there's plenty of factors right now pulling in the direction of the University of Texas. And it certainly helps that, one, Colin Simmons is there, and two, those conversations he had with Ryan Wingo when he was hosted on campus earlier this month, that will go a long way. And again, I feel very confident about where Texas sits at the moment going forward into July.
To your point on that, it's very easy for DeCorian Moore to see how often Colin Simmons can come back up to Dallas and see his family.
Yep.
That's a different game at Ohio State, in Columbus, Eugene, Oregon, or even Baton Rouge. So, again, we feel comfortable saying Texas is in a good spot. We'll see how this finishes up. On the Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, interesting. I think we both think we'll rip through this pretty cool. I think we both think Texas is in a great spot for Jamie French. Decision remains scheduled for August 30th. Tennessee's probably the actual number 2. We don't think he's staying in state. So Miami, while they got a visit, isn't probably the number 2 team. That leaves Tennessee and LSU. I think everything that we're hearing is Tennessee would be the number 2, but I think Texas is in a good spot there. Khalil Lockett, CJ, is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Based on something I was told today, he could be the first of the 3 to announce a decision publicly. That is going to be interesting because Jamie French, we know, is August 30th. DeCorian Moore, we believe, is late July or early August, right before the season and school starts at Duncanville. So Khalil Lockett will likely be the first to announce a decision publicly of those 3.
Yeah, it's a bit peculiar, right? Because, of course, I feel very good about where Texas sits for DeCorian Moore. I feel good about where Texas sits for Jamie French. The question mark in this class has always been, well, what about Khalil Lockett? I know that there's been plenty of traction for the Longhorns in this recruitment. Of course, they got him on campus several times over the spring and into the summer. But at the same time, Alabama wowed him a little bit. LSU and Texas A&M gave him something to think about, as did Florida State. So it's a little bit more open for the time being than what I'm seeing out of the 2 other wide receivers in this class. And if he is the first to announce it, I'm not sure, where the wrench comes from if there is one thrown into the other recruitments of DeCorian Moore and Jamie French, if Texas does take Khalil Lockett when he decides to commit. It's interesting. Right now, I'd lean a little more towards Alabama, but you never know with this world of recruiting, and especially with how hot Texas has been on the wide receiver trail over the past few years.
Yeah, I'll say this. If he drops a top 3 edit, I expect Texas to be in it. If he drops a top 2 edit, I expect Texas to be in it. The question is, who's the other school, and can Texas actually win the recruitment? That's going to be the question that comes out of this. And so again, we think if there's a top 3 type of edit before decision, we think Texas will be in that edit. Who will be in it? Probably Alabama and somebody else. Will he actually pick Texas? We don't have. I think that's still in the balance. I think that's the main thing. They haven't made a decision. So we'll have to see on that one. Then also at wide receiver, Steve Sarkisian scheduled to speak with Tanook Hines and Kelshawn Johnson this week. Then Dalen McCutcheon is there on the peripheral. That's pretty much your wide receivers right now for the University of Texas in this class. All right, CJ, moving on, tight end. Nick Townsend, Amari Winston committed, obviously had a great official visit. There's Nick Townsend. There's Caleb Edwards. Nick Townsend is more closer to a must-get recruit than I think Texas fans think. He's a stud. He is a difference maker. He is an elite prospect, a top 100-level prospect on both sides of the ball, going to be a tight end. I think we both feel like Texas is working from a pretty good spot here as this decision date closes in. It's going to be July 8th.
Right. I felt very strong about where Texas left this official visit weekend. Heard some really positive remarks in regards to his time on campus, how Texas presented him in terms of what he could be at the tight end in this offense, which, as we know, Gerry, if you can stretch the field vertically, you're going to get the rock at the tight end position. And it certainly helps. I want to get your thoughts here. But that willingness to play dirty ball in the trenches is something that provides a bit of an advantage for him right now in this recruitment as well. I mean, we've saw it over time with Texas. If you're able to bridge that gap from the running game to the passing game, especially vertically at the tight end spot, you're going to be on the field often for the Longhorns. And I think he's exactly that type of guy who can do just that.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a combination of Jatavion Sanders and Amari Niblack and also add physicality at the line of scrimmage to that, I think that's what you have.
You got a complete tight end right there.
And that's a mouthful. Texas fans are like, whoa, Gerry, you're an idiot. But no, that's what we're talking about here. The guy's that talented. I mean, 6'3.5", 230, ran 10.92, and is physical. He knocks helmets off on defense. He's not just out there running around on defense, making plays off athleticism. He knocks helmets off in Houston. So big-time player. Caleb Edwards, we don't think goes to Texas. We think that's leaning more to the Auburn, Alabama, or Oregon direction, or he could stay in state. I think it's a bit of a wild card. His girlfriend did make the trips down south for those visits, so that's noteworthy always in recruiting. All right, offensive line's very interesting. 3 guys in the boat 4 guys remaining on the board. Could Texas get 3 of those? Not out of the question. Obviously, Jordan Coleman, Devin Colton, and Jackson Christian visited last week along with Michael Fasusi. We'll start with Fasusi because I really think it's going back and forth between Texas and Oklahoma right now. I think there's some aspects of Oklahoma Fasusi really likes, and there's the Kyle Flood aspect at Texas that Fasusi really likes. And I think he is I think that's going back and forth, and I think it's gonna continue to kind of tilt back and forth because he's not going to decide until late August.
Yeah, he's going to have plenty of time to see really 2 more months, maybe even 3, if this stretches into the season at all in regards to how these recruiting pitches stay the same, if anything changes. Of course, it felt like Gerry at one point, maybe about a month ago, it was Texas versus Texas A&M for Michael Fasusi, probably even more recently than that. Oklahoma's made a strong push. Of course, I think they knocked it out of the park on that official visit. They pushed development. They pushed Bill Bedenbaugh getting offensive linemen into the NFL. And I think there's a little bit more of a family feel that was pushed to him in Norman than what we saw in Austin. And that's coming from folks up in the Oklahoma area who will say, yeah, I think Bill Bedenbaugh laid it all out on the line, said, look at everybody I've developed and look at what the success I've had here at Oklahoma, which we know Kyle Flood's had success with plenty of talented prospects getting drafted before, but maybe not so much at Texas, right? And that's not his fault. You know, that offensive line has not seen much turnover since he first arrived. But Bill Bedenbaugh, that's what they've been pushing and kind of using to their advantage up at Oklahoma right now. And as a result, it's a little bit more Texas-Oklahoma than what we originally thought it would be with Texas and Texas A&M.
And if you're an A&M fan listening to this, and you should be, you have more time to keep swinging away too, because that decision is not expected until a couple of months away, late August. So the interesting thing there will be, does he show up somewhere for a barbecue or pool party in late July? We bet he does, but we don't know where yet. Then on the other offensive line spots, other guys left uncommitted. There's John Mills, who we believe remains a Texas lean over Washington. Florida's not in the picture, as some people have been reporting. It's Texas or Washington. It has been for a long time, once Michigan was out of the picture. He did visit Florida. He did visit Cal. He did visit Nebraska, but those people weren't going to win the recruitment. It's always been Texas or Washington. Then there's Nick Brooks. Again, late August, September, decision right now on the timeline. Texas probably in a good spot right now. What happens with other guys if they commit to Texas before that? What can happen from a numbers perspective? Texas, Georgia battling this out. USC is hopeful, but feels like it's an SEC win coming for either Texas or Georgia. Iowa, not really in the picture to actually win out, but they do have time. But they're right now, they're not thought to be a winner. And then there's Lamont Rogers, CJ. Lamont Rogers is interesting because there's a lot of inconsistencies in the recruitment for college coaches because the dad lives in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and he's only been on a couple of official visits. Right. The mom's had some family stuff she's dealing with, so she hasn't been on all the official visits. So colleges like consistency to know where they stand. They don't have it in this recruitment. What we do know is he loves Missouri, the offensive line coach at Missouri. And he made the midweek to Oklahoma. And he had a good trip at Texas. He had a good visit to A&M and FSU. You're going to have great visits. But can Missouri actually win this recruitment over Oklahoma and Texas? Or the visits the dad went on were FSU and A&M. How does that play into it? I know he really likes Missouri.
Yeah, to me, he's probably the biggest wild card of this bunch of offensive linemen. The other interesting fact about these guys is the timelines, right? And you look at Nick Brooks, you look at Michael Fasusi. I don't know if we actually do know when Lamont Rogers is truly planning on going because it's, again, a little bit more open there. But these could all stretch where in the next 2 to 3 months, you see things change on all fronts of teams recruiting each player. I think, like you said, Texas sits in a great spot for John Mills. Then you're up to 4 potentially, right? What else happens with this offensive line group? Is it 2 out of the 3? If Mills does commit to Texas, who then becomes the top priority if timelines remain scattered throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall? That'll be interesting. It's very much like the wide receiver spot where it's
to your point, CJ. To your point, that's a great point. I think Rogers goes first. Fasusi second, and Nick Brooks third as far as the decision. So that will be interesting. It's pretty simple. If Lamont Rogers doesn't go to Texas and John Mills does pick Texas,
right,
and that's 4, they would take Fasusi and Brooks. I don't think there's any question about that. Where it gets interesting is if Lamont Rogers kind of surprises some people and picks Texas. Then it gets interesting.
You're a big fan of his his upside athletically.
Sure.
I feel like at times whenever we talk about these guys, there's, obviously we've talked about Nick Brooks and how big of a human he is. Michael Fasusi has 5 stars. Lamont Rogers is still a very good player, 100%. And I think that's maybe sometimes fallen by the wayside whenever we discuss it on the boards or social media. Texas fans, this is a good football player here.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Top 200 type kid in the country, prospect in the country. All right, so moving on to D-line, which is interesting. Kevin went off the board to FSU. Brandon Brown, we still believe, favors Texas. Obviously, there's somebody in the family that's pro Bo Davis because Bo's been in that relationship the longest. It's going to be Texas or LSU. We've been saying that for a while. Tennessee, no. Oklahoma got a visit. I think Oklahoma tried to hurt Texas more than they actually thought they were going to get Brandon Brown last weekend. But we still expect this to be Texas or LSU at the end of the day, and we think a final decision will come here in the next couple of weeks with Brandon Brown. Then it gets to Josiah Sharma, who's announcing Friday. He visited Alabama over the weekend. What we've heard is I think Alabama thought it was a done deal. They don't think that anymore, at least headed into the visit last weekend. Oregon did enough to push their way into the picture. It won't be Washington. It's Texas. It's Alabama. It's Oregon. It's going to be one of those 3 unless Washington pulls a huge upset in this recruitment. But that one's going to be very interesting because I think Texas very much in it, has a very good shot here. But a lot's going to come down in this recruitment. Does Josiah Sharma call Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan and say, I'm not coming, guys. I love you. Had a great relationship for a year and a half. I'm not coming.
That would be as big a win for Texas. That would be as big a loss it would be for Alabama if that's the case there. Again, this is a guy that when we look at it, I know you and Bobby did a great job earlier today, Gerry, of breaking down what's going on in the world of defensive line. Well, with Florida State making sure that theirs stay theirs and obviously going out and adding more, this is a big one for Texas. And again, that visit I look at early this spring when he made it to campus with some of his high school coaches, that really opened up the doors for me to say, yeah, the interest with Josiah Sharma and the Texas Longhorns is absolutely real. And there's going to be some connections there, of course, with Johnny Nance and with Kenny Baker. That West Coast that we've talked about is now opening up to the Longhorns even more so. And if you're able to go out there and secure a commitment from a 6'4", 6'5", 320-pound guy out there, speaks a lot to the efforts that have been put in and recognized right now. So we'll see, again, that decision coming Friday. It would be a big one for the Longhorns.
And then we'll move on. Myron Charles visited FSU over the weekend. That's Texas or FSU. Miami's probably third. But Texas is right there, battling FSU for Myron Charles. We'll see what happens on that. Then you get to DJ Sanders. I think Texas is in a really good spot over Michigan in that one. Texas pushing harder in A&M decision there in the next couple of weeks. Moving on to Edge, which is interesting. With Jay Brown Hilson saying he's sticking with FSU, you have Lance Jackson committed, one of the top guys in the country. May end up being a 5-star prospect. So what does Texas do? They push harder for Smith Orogbo or Marco Jones, who also visited USC last weekend, who USC's pushing harder for after Isaiah Gibson dropped the Trojans. I feel like it's going to be Smith Orogbo, which sets the tables for, family's huge on academics. Texas has a big academic lead on Texas Tech and Oklahoma. But then there's the piece that Lubbock and Norman are smaller town cities versus big Austin. And what does the family think about that? That's going to be an interesting one because I do expect Texas to make a push this week for Smith Orogbo headed into his July 1st decision.
It's interesting for 2 reasons, right? And both of them come from Norman, right? Oklahoma kind of felt like, yeah, I feel like we could push for him and get him. Feel the same about Texas potentially, but who's actually going to do it? Who's going to man up there with Texas Tech after that early June official visit where it felt like he was going to be Texas to lose? Well, they made the effort to go up there and make him a priority. Right now, Texas will have that opportunity the last week to make sure that he feels that way, as will Oklahoma, who recently had Max Randall on campus, who just committed to Penn State. So they might be at a little bit more of a dire position at the edge spot this year, going into the decision week for Smith-Orogbo. I say that because, again, at the end of the day, I know Texas has brought in a lot of guys for the edge spot, as for the defensive line room, but you still have Lance Jackson in the fold. And that, to me, provides some sort of buffer and some comfort there for the Longhorns, saying, yeah, hey, we still got a good guy here, and we can, be a little bit picky and choosy with who we want to go with. But to your point, I mean, Smith-Orogbo is a tremendous talent. That first step is elite. It's lightning quick. And again, I think there's plenty of room for him to fill out and become even a better player at the next level once he gets into that college weight room.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Smith-Orogbo announces July 1st. Marco Jones out of San Ramon High, Danville, California, announces July 2nd. That'll be Texas, Michigan, or USC. All right, moving on to a linebacker, CJ. Just got 3 or 4 minutes left here. Linebacker, pretty much down to 3 guys. Elijah Barnes, one of the best in the country in a boat. Madden Faremo, Texas or Notre Dame. We'll see when he makes a decision. Riley Pettijohn, Texas, Ohio State, Texas A&M. I'm not just ruling out USC. I just don't think they're going to be picked. Then there's Jonathan Cunningham, Texas, Utah, visited Kansas over the weekend. Texas wants 3 linebackers in the class. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But obviously the name that Texas fans want to know about, Madden Faremo and Riley Pettijohn.
Yeah, 100%. Over the last week and a half or so, I've heard a lot of positives for Texas A&M, as I've heard for Ohio State for Riley Pettijohn. Texas did a great job on their official visit for Pettijohn, but things are opening up more so than I thought they would be at this time in the month of June, where I think Texas made a lot of ground up for Madden Faremo. And again, what was perceived to be a Notre Dame lean heavily coming into the weekend, Texas now sitting like they've closed the gap a little bit there. He said great things about his trip, his relationship with Johnny Nance, and I think the family really enjoyed their time in Austin and the opportunities outside of football that the city and the university can provide for student athletes. Again, is it enough to overcome what was a big lead for Notre Dame? I'm not sure, but I think it's very, very tight at the moment. Whereas, again, for Riley Pettijohn, Gerry, I think it's a little bit more open with Ohio State, Texas A&M, Texas at the moment.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Madden Faremo is one of the things that came out, he was on campus before in the spring. That wasn't reported. He's not a social media guy. Texas had him on campus before. This is the first time with the family. But he had been on campus before, which is very interesting. So we'll see how linebacker shakes out. But here's the thing. With Elijah Barnes in the boat, if you get either Madden Faremo or Riley Pettijohn, if you get one of those two, you have 2 tremendous linebacker prospects.
Yes.
If you end up getting Cunningham as your third, that's a great linebacker class, period. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, we're going to take another second here for John Donovan before we close out with defensive back recruiting. We would like to thank our sponsor, John Donovan, president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. As a proud UT alum, John has served for 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member and is now helping lead the build-out of the Collin County, Texas Exes chapter. His passion for the University of Texas drives his volunteer commitment to not only serve his fellow alumni through his dedication to the Texas Exes organization, but he has also focused and dedicated his own firm to serving the wealth management needs of his fellow University of Texas alumni and all UT employees. John is a certified financial planner who has spent over 30 years providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends from coast to coast. So to receive your free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you and your family secure your own financial future, simply call Longhorn Wealth Team at 972-707-4900 or schedule an appointment online, www.longhornwealth.net. And as John always says, hook 'em. Thank you very much, John Donovan, for being the sole sponsor of Talkin Ball. All right, we're going to close out with DB recruiting. First, I'll hit on Michael Terry. Total wildcard recruitment and athlete, because I think we'll just leave that here. Oregon says you can play running back. Nebraska says you can catch passes from Dylan Raiola. A&M and Texas are saying athlete. We'll see which way it goes. That one could play out a while. So Michael Terry, a prospect Texas wants, but one that we don't think he's going to make a decision soon. As of today, that could change. But that one could go into August as well. late July, August, or even September. All right, defensive back recruiting. Very interesting, CJ. I know after defensive back, D-line, it's almost D-back recruiting is where Texas fans have a lot of their energy on defensive side of the ball, obviously. We feel good about Cade Phillips. We feel good about Nathan Tillman. We feel pretty good about Aiden Anning. Then you have, and if Texas wins all those, Aiden Anning, we're still waiting. But then you get down to what does Texas have at corner? You have Dorian Brew. Dijon Lee's not going to Texas. And you have Tristan Castro. You have Devin Williams, guys that are committed elsewhere that visited. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. If Texas gets Aiden Anning, do they hold serve? If Dorian Brew goes to Ohio State, do they just hold serve and try to flip a Devin Sanchez and kind of go big deep sea fishing during a season or not? I think safety's going to settle out here in the next couple of weeks for Texas. So what happens at corner if they don't get Aiden Anning or if they do get Aiden Anning?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And it's something that we've seen over recent cycles with Terry Joseph and Steve Sarkisian is they're very active late in cycles when it comes to flipping prospects, right? That was Terrence Brooks from Ohio State. That was Wardell Mack. That was Xavier Phil-Sami. And of course, Texas has benefited from turnover at the coaching spots at other places. We'll see what the case is later on this cycle, around the SEC, around the rest of the country in terms of what starts opening up around the season and which prospects begin to kind of open up their recruitments as well. One thing I will say is whether or not Texas and Dorian Brew are a good match, that communication, and you've mentioned this as well, Gerry, about Devin Sanchez. It's not all the way shut yet. No. I received a text earlier today that says, hey, don't close any doors on that one just yet. Of course, he is currently committed to Ohio State. He was on campus earlier this spring for the UIL track meet. So not necessarily a true visit, but he did get to walk around DKR and obviously the Mike A. Myers track and field and soccer facilities as well. So he's been to Austin, whether or not it was a true visit or not. One thing I will say is at this time, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would expect Texas to add to their secondary room, both safety and cornerbacks. And then I expect things to kind of quiet down as we go into the season. And again, let that staff do late season kind of magic again, as we've seen over the past few years.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this edition of Talkin Ball. For CJ Vogel, I'm Gerry Hamilton. You guys have a great evening, and we'll see you on Coffee and Football in the morning.
Welcome.